Ready? I'd like to call to order this meeting, Oconee County Planning Commission, Monday
It's Monday.
Then Monday all day.
at 6 o'clock. I'm looking at the agenda, it says Thursday, September the 16th. So our first order of business is invocation. Ms. Stacy?
Dear Lord, we come to you today just thanking you for this day, Lord. Thank you for the sunshine. Thank you for the rain we've had. We just ask that you be with us during this meeting, Lord, that we would keep each other in mind, keep all of the citizens of Oconee in mind as we make decisions, Lord, that hopefully will positively impact and not negatively impact our neighbors, Lord. We just ask that you be with us through this and help us to conduct ourselves in a manner that will be pleasing to you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Mr. Mike, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Public comment or non-agenda items, Mr. Barnett?
My name's Jerry Barnett. Know who you are. To tell you, I live on the farm where I grew up. Grew up in a dairy barn. At that time, there were 60-some grade A dairies in Oconee County. Now, maybe 2. Sign of the times. Things change, and I've seen a lot of change since then. This Carter thing is really, really disturbing to an American citizen. It has nothing whatsoever to do with controlling traffic. This is a state road. And Oconee County has, through royal decree, I guess, called it a corridor. But it is a state road. It belongs to the people of South Carolina. They have traffic engineers that study traffic flows and how to solve traffic problems. Now, they may not be too good at it. Look at 85 around Greenville. Maybe they're not too good at it. But nevertheless, that's the law. And I'm seeing some people trying to flex muscle that they ain't got or create muscle that they never will have because the state constitution, state law will not allow it to happen if the people rise up. And what I see, it's an excuse to seize control of private property outside that public right-of-way and dictate the facade of a private business, down to parking and shrubbery and all this nonsense. And according to the Carter plan, you're denying these people the right to advertise that private business, yet they recommend putting a big old sign up there advertising Seneca. Now, which way do you want it? You know, can you deny the people the right to advertise and then advertise Seneca? Something bad out of whack with this thing, and it's very, very disturbing. And why scoot on down the road and expand this nonsense? But y'all need to think about this, because the facade of that private business has nothing whatsoever to do with traffic control. And also in this comp plan, or the Carter plan, they've talked about taking power line right-of-ways for public use. y'all need to check on what you're doing here, because that right-of-way has granted an easement for the transmission of power, and that's it. When you leave that public road, you're trespassing. If you go to those power lines, you are trespassing. I've got an easement through my place for a state road and a small easement for a power line. Transmission of power only. I better not catch nobody trespassing on that power line. So think about it. Don't use these for an excuse to flex muscle you ain't got. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barnett. All right, our next item is the approval of minutes for 9/5/2019. Do I hear a motion?
So move. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any corrections, changes, anything to be done? Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, we have comp plan, agriculture element, Mr. Barnett again.
All right, another round. This ag element, the proposal to add a county employee to spread propaganda to the rural community disturbs me again. When you start this intrusion into private lives of the rural community, where does it stop? Now, we always say, well, what I just know what I read in the past, but it's supposedly to communicate with the rural community and agriculture in general. I don't know whether all of you know this or not, but I'll tell it to you anyway. You have the Clemson Extension Service located in the ag building up here for that very purpose. Also, you have the Soil Conservation Service. Forestry Service also works out of that building from time to time, the state forester. So we have plenty of state and federal employees to work with the rural community and agriculture. We certainly don't need somebody at the county level spreading rumors and propaganda and mainly bloating an already bloated pay roster of this county. So we don't need, that's somebody we absolutely do not need to rob the people of their heritage and their birthright of being free American citizens able to plant different crops every year without somebody from the county coming along interfering in private business. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, we have a guest speaker, Mr. Rex.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commission, for allowing us to speak. We'd like to just speak a minute about the comprehensive plan and the agricultural element. Much research and deliberation has gone into it, and we've come up with a document that we think is a workable and flexible document for your approval. And just wanted to present it to you tonight. So if you have any questions, we'll try to answer those. If not, we'll stand by.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Rex at this time?
Mr. Vassy did have one earlier, excuse me. While they think about it, I can answer one already given, about the decline in the orchards. One of the things we have trouble with is people reporting. They don't like to report their activities so thoroughly maybe sometimes, and sometimes people go out of business. And like I mentioned, sometimes the weather and the climate, things don't cooperate, trees die. So there are a lot of different reasons. Agriculture is a multifaceted, complicated industry. So that's one of the reasons, or a couple of reasons. But
Anyone else have any questions at this time?
This position that Jerry brought up, what was y'all's thinking in putting that in there?
Overall, we're trying to get the council to give us more emphasis in the agricultural industry, and we figured a person in that capacity would have time to devote to advertising our activities, advertising agricultural things, helping the citizens, having a liaison with the county and with the citizenry. And Mr. Chapman does a lot of that right now. He's a great liaison with us in the county council, and he helps provide research and information that we use. And so we thought a county council or a county employee would possibly help boost that emphasis. A liaison and assistant in that capacity.
Rich, let me just compliment you on what you have here. You see that everyone knows there's threats to farmland from urban sprawl, and I just want to compliment you that you've addressed that topic very well. It starts on page 810, and I just wanted to say that you did a very good job with it. You went through the various options that were available, and it's more or less a choice of what people want to do, but there are options out there, and you addressed it very effectively. I just want to compliment you because you waltzed around some difficult subjects, and you dealt with them very effectively. So good job.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We had numerous listening sessions, a lot of input from as many people as we could get, which is a type of survey, I guess you could say, and got a lot of input, looked at other regions of the country, looked at farming and soil use and what's valuable land and what we need to look at and what we hope to preserve. My dad used to say they're not making any more land, so.
Let me just carry this on further. I noticed that when you got back here in the goals and objectives and strategies, that you pretty much kept them all the same that you had in the last comprehensive plan. And you felt comfortable with what, I know you had spirited discussions about them, but you're obviously very comfortable with what you have here and what you brought forward. It just stayed more or less the same from what you had in the last comprehensive plan.
Yes, sir. We tweaked and discussed at great length and felt like we came up with a pretty good product. So. And it's a workable document. This is a draft, so.
It's very good.
It wasn't in the previous comprehensive plan because this is the first comprehensive plan that would be included in it. It was in the previous draft, correct?
Right, so what I think here is, and I may have left this in, but give me a second here. That I believe, now it's not wanting to show anything. Technology. Anyhow, everything is a black text just because I sent it to you all as a draft for you all. There are some of the items in here were pulled, so the last iteration of the comprehensive plan did not have an agricultural element. So anything agriculture related pretty much probably sat in the natural resources element or sat in perhaps the economic element. But a lot of these are brand new. I'd say the majorities are fairly new, at least in part or in whole, to this document. That last little blurb about color coding at the very end, I should have erased that out of here. Or I should have left the color coding. Either or.
Well, I'd like to say I watched several of the meetings. I didn't actually attend, but I actually watched them on YouTube. And y'all did a great job with, at least for the meetings that I saw, y'all were doing a great job trying to get the information and put down exactly what needed to be in here. I think y'all did a great job in that, and I've read through it, and I would think it's a great document now.
Thank you, sir.
I was trying to gather my thoughts here about this. I really want, in my mind, for us to utilize your expertise as a board in going through and putting together, which it looks like you've done, a document which really meets the needs of the agriculture community. If, however, we find ourselves up here, or if county council finds themselves starting to dissect this document and pick through it in any way, are there areas where you and your board felt like that these items are really imperative, or these are the most important takeaways in this document that you want to share with us? Did that make sense?
Yeah, I can't say that they're any one over the other important, but we felt like they're pretty important, and they are flexible somewhat. You know, we're not locked in, but we thought that these might be the best avenues to take. It's the plan overall. To me, loss of land is a big one. Loss of usage of farmland is tremendous. And another one is the setbacks that the farmer observes. He is obliged to alter his operations based on a person coming in. So he has to remain set back from other houses and from his property line a certain distance. Right now, there's no obligation for the person that moves in to absorb any of that, liability or setback. So those are just two personally important ones to me.
And do I understand that while the state has the Right to Farm Act, the county has not additionally adopted that act? Is that true or not true?
I do not know that.
You don't have to. It's a state.
It's a state law.
It's a state law. It supersedes county law.
Correct. In reading the act, go ahead, I'm sorry.
If I can, do you mind, Rick? Do you mind if I go?
Go right ahead.
I'm Debbie Sewell. I'm also on the Ag Advisory Board. One thing we thought is we're not trying to go over and above the state law, but as the county have our own Right to Farm Act that is, that I guess promote or lets people know what our feelings are about agriculture in Oconee County. Unfortunately, we seem to be on the low end of the people's mind when it comes to what we're doing. And there's a lot of people that don't even understand the state law, but just to strengthen our commitment to agriculture in Oconee County, not to supersede the state, of course. That's what our feelings are.
I think more than that, we need to let the citizens know about the state law. That is not promoted enough in this county. So anytime that somebody comes in to put a farm in, there's an uproar every time that anybody wants to farm or start a new operation. And a lot of that is DHEC's fault because of the way that they allow people to come in and complain. Even though they're not going to do anything about it, they still allow them to complain. If it's not violating anything, then they shouldn't be allowed because it just causes a big uproar. But I think we need, if you're going to do that kind of county rights to farm, that needs to be in there somehow, working with DHEC or something to mitigate all the uproar every time a farm comes in. Because it's always, we're not against farms, just not in my neighborhood. I mean, that's what you hear countywide. We don't want it in our neighborhood. Well, then who's going to grow your food?
That's a good question.
That was alluding to my question is we do have a state law, and state laws in any category meet the bare minimum standards of something to get us by. From a county standpoint, are we supporting and directing people to say, hey, there is a state law out here, you can't stop us from doing this?
No, the only person that promotes that state law is the farmer that's having to fight everybody around him.
So should there not be something in this from our county saying we are supporting farmers?
I think y'all done an excellent job here. And for me, what I saw when I read that was the word policy instead of law. And I felt like y'all had done an excellent job of going through here and affirming that we were in fact going to encourage policies or ordinances in the future, which is what the policy says, that would encourage, that would support agriculture. Because you've said that, you want to encourage pilot programs, you want to encourage, activate vacant and underutilized county-owned properties, encourage new agricultural technology. There's so many things that, to me, through here, you did address supporting agriculture. And you've got places where you're talking about educating people in the, I can't even name them all in my mind, but I think I'm gonna come out and say I think you did an excellent job of actually writing something that can go in as a policy document that does support the right to farm, including one of them that really struck me because I know it's come up before, in a subdivision where somebody who was not even from this country, they had come in here as naturalized citizens, and so they didn't understand when they bought a house that there was a HOA that said they couldn't have a farm because where they came from said that they raised, it's tradition that they raise their own food. And I know it took quite a battle for them to be able to have a garden in their backyard even, because the HOA said they couldn't, even though there was not county policy. And so somewhere in here, I believe, am I correct, y'all have said, we're going to discourage any policy that says that you cannot raise your own food. We're going to simply say, no, we're going to take that out of any design standards and say you have a right to raise your own food. So I think y'all did a great job of that. Certainly educating people in that, again, is y'all's job, which is super. And for me, that staff position, yes, we are a bloated government. All governments are bloated. But at the same time, I know recently of a number of times when things within the county overlapped on top of each other, because one group was doing one thing, another group was doing something else, and another group was doing something else, and all of a sudden it all was coming together on the same day. So people were having to choose which thing to be involved in, and that's never good. And if we had a single coordinating person and not adding to the planning department's job, it would be wonderful to be able to communicate things like that where stuff is going on through a single entity. But I think y'all did a great job.
You're absolutely right. Our emphasis is communication and coordination and cooperation. We have a lot of farm groups that don't seem to communicate as effectively as they could, and they need to cooperate. And there's no reason we can't put words in there and tell people about who we are and what we're doing and what we're trying to do. We're trying to work on some of the setback issues too, about the farming and later comers moving out to the farm and to the country and want to dictate what the farmer that's been there for generations maybe can do. So we have some things in the works on that too.
If maybe that, if you do that staff position, if maybe they could be a liaison for state politics too, as far as keeping the state from making policies that would inadvertently hurt us here in agriculture. Because I think a lot of people that are making the laws down there have no clue, and I don't think there's enough people who know what they're doing down there advocating for farmers. You get what I'm saying, David?
Need more communication and cooperation, that's correct.
I'd agree. I think overall it's a really good document, elements, really well done. Goals and objectives are positive, and they can all seemingly be implemented at some point. So I think it looks really good. Thank you.
Thank y'all. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate what y'all are doing too.
Okay,
I'd like to make a motion that we accept this element as presented.
I'll second that.
have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Can we make a few grammatical corrections?
Yes, ma'am, you sure can.
I love that, y'all know my love is agriculture, so it's got to go out right. On 817, there needs to be a space between individuals and lacking And I felt like at the very last line of the paragraph there, or actually in the last paragraph, USDA has mapped areas that lack access to fresh and healthy foods, noted as food deserts. Take out an as.
Yeah.
And the last sentence would sound better, I think, if you said this data is shown on map 8.3 instead of this map is shown on map 8.3. And actually, I think those were actually the only two grammatical.
Where was that first thing?
The very first one it's in the paragraph above that, the lack of access to a variety of fresh and healthy. On the third line underneath that, it says USDA Economic Research Service defines individuals lacking. Just need a space between those two. The rest of it's very well done.
I just read right through.
German wrote it.
My daddy had a ruler. Bam, bam. There is a misspelled word in strategy 8.1.1.10. Y'all, you type like I type. My right hand's going faster than my left hand. Public on agriculture. Anyway, just the C and the U are reversed.
Oh, the second one.
Yes, ma'am, the second one on that page. I don't think there was any other misspellings.
Impressive.
And then there were just one or two other little things, and I think this might help address Stacy's concerns as well. Under strategy 8.1.1.5, I would like to add our legislative delegation as an accountable agency for that one, because in fact, that's who we need to, we can't support state legislation unless we're talking to the people that go vote on it. So I felt like they needed to be added. And I felt like, I don't know who makes all the real estate laws, but if we're going to pass a law that affects real estate, we can talk to the real estate folks, but we probably also at the same time need to add our legislative delegation there, because they'll be the ones that have to actually introduce the laws. So if we could add them to that. I felt like under 8.1.2, enhance agricultural operations and opportunities, the 8.1.2.1, if we added the Oconee Economic Alliance and the Chamber as an accountable agency there. And Mr. Chapman, I'll be happy to hand you this at the end if you'd like to.
I got it all.
Okay. And the 8.1.2.3, ensure the ability of a farmer to have a farm-related business on site. I think we need to be accountable for that, because a lot of times we're the ones that get called on to make any changes in these things. And so we need to make sure we're emphasizing to council to pass anything that comes through that makes sure that if they want to have a canning place or a sales office or whatever they need, that we address that.
So Planning Commission?
Yes, sir, the Planning Commission to number 8.1.2.3. I'd like to see us add the School District of Oconee County as an accountable agency for 8.1.2.4, because that addresses the supportive training for interested people. You've got Hamilton Career Center, you've got all kinds of things that, you know, they talked about doing a sustainable ag program at the community, the Oakway Community Center, those kinds of things. I felt like under 8.1.2.5, we could add the Oconee Economic Alliance. Because they're not actually officially full county, right? I mean, they're also privatized, so aren't they a public-private?
To some degree, they're all county employees.
Oh, okay, all right, well, anyway, that was one.
Okay.
Under the 8.1.2.8 on page 823, I would like to add the Planning Commission to that as well, because I've actually been up to areas in North Carolina that have those voluntary ag districts where the people make the commitment themselves to sort of say, put up a sign and say, if you move here, you better be used to smells. And it took their Planning Commission to get that through. So if you would, please add the Planning Commission there. On the 8.1.2.7, and 8.1.2.9, I would also like to add the Foothills Agricultural Resource and Marketing Center to both of those, the Farm Center, because we are working close with charitable groups to both support farmers markets and hopefully in the future access to cold storage and perhaps a commercial kitchen as well, which would help with both of those. And we do have, next week, there'll be about somewhere between 1,500 and 1,700 elementary children who who come as in ag career presentations there. So, that they are accountable. That's it. Y'all did great.
That's it?
Sir,
That's it?
I can quit. Yes, sir.
If I may, so the initial motion was to accept as suggested. There was a second to that. To amend that agenda, if you all want to, then we'll need, so we'll have to amend that motion. Mr. Massey, if you want to amend that motion, then we go for discussion, if anything that Mrs. McPhail just offered as a suggestion, you will all like to discuss, or, because that was a lot of things.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I didn't want to stop you. You're on a good roll. So if you'd like to amend it to accept the edits by Mrs. McPhail, and then you all can discuss if you have any discussion points about what she said.
So the one that made the motion needs to amend it.
Let's go ahead and do that.
Well, I'd like to amend the motion to accept what Ms. McPhail added. I'll second it.
Yeah, so now, if there's any discussion about what was added, you all can have that at this moment.
Any discussion for what Ms. McPhail wanted to add?
Oh, they were great additions.
Okay, if there's no discussion, do I hear, all those in favor of the amended motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. And I've lost my agenda. Where is that? Right there. There it is. All right, Mr. Adam. You're up.
Okay, so last year, I don't know if y'all recall, it might have been longer than that, is that we have a road naming policy. The planning commission's in charge of any number of road naming and addressing. You all have, by policy, have created a document, a road naming policy, not an address policy. So anytime you get an address, you're basically using your own policy. Part of that policy is that if you all live on a road, you want to rename it, there's a standard for that. There is a group of people who want to rename a road, O'Shiel Drive, up in the Mountain Rest area. As they do not have 100% of the respondents, they have to come to the planning commission for that road name change. I'll provide you with all of the information regarding that well before the hearing. The chairman has scheduled a hearing for our next planning commission meeting on October 7th, I believe. And at that point in time, the applicant will provide all the information necessary for you all to make a decision whether to rename the road or not. They'll give you a name that they wish to have, and if that satisfies you all, then it goes from there. And this was just as an informational session about that. Do you have any questions?
No questions. Can we ask them that if they don't have 100%, that they give explanation as to who has either objected or not been able to be reached, whether it's a landowner or whether it's a homeowner or et cetera?
Sir?
All right. So we can move on to number 8.
Certainly. So, as I mentioned at the last meeting, the Planning and Economic Development asked the Planning Commission to look at signs, designs, and landscaping along certain corridors. Exit 1, 123, the other three make me a moment. Also, part of it was looking at the definition of a long debated term, Appalachian rustic elements. So, To that end, I figured since tonight I knew we wouldn't have I would hope, hopefully this wouldn't be a huge night. I figured I'd bring up that definition of Appalachian rustic elegance. So if I may, the first part went through existing definitions and minutes and how people thought of it. And then I took each word, Appalachian rustic and elegance, and broke it down by noun, verb, adjective, pronoun, past, present, participle, historic usage. And I came to the conclusion that it's really annoying. I'm already bored talking about it. So if you all would like to, we were asked to provide a definition of Appalachian rustic elegance. Perhaps around that would be, since that term does carry a lot of baggage, and what may be good for a certain area design for a certain area of the county may not be good for another area. I mean, it's a big county. It's a very varied county. So perhaps we could look at it in terms of just calling it design standards. I didn't come here with the idea tonight that we would hash out what color beige we're going to call it, but perhaps we just look at it as far as calling it design standards. And that was a conversation I was looking to have tonight versus us trying to look at it as Appalachian rustic elegance, or we try to define that as well. That was my thought on it.
I don't like the thought of defining a word after you already used the words legally in a document. You should have defined the word before you put it in the document. As far as Appalachian rustic elegance should have been defined before they ever used it in any document. It's in the design standards, right?
I believe you're referencing Destination Oconee. I think there's probably a big one sitting back there, that big kind of book. Yeah, and there's definitely paragraphs about it. I mean, I could tell you my thoughts on it, what it could be, but that doesn't necessarily make it so. And it's not in our ordinance anywhere, so we don't have it legally defined.
So it's not in any ordinance
No,
that anybody has to go by.
that is correct. Sir?
I'm the guy that sat out here and talked about design standards a lot, and it is a touchy term. And just the term design standards, because we do have such a variance in the county from one end to the other, it's just not applicable to use that term Appalachian rustic. And design standards just seems to give us more latitude if in fact that is going to go forward. I even used the word optional design standards, added that in front of it, because it's not going to be used everywhere, just perhaps in certain areas. So I thought the term optional design standards would be more acceptable to people. You go to the north in areas, and Appalachian might be, but you go down there further in the agriculture area, and it's just not. It doesn't fit in with their culture and with their design down there and with the geography. So,
We're more rustic.
yeah.
Give us some tin and wood.
Where's the elegance?
Rusty tin would be best.
It must be in the middle part.
So that's my comments is, stick with design standards if it's going to be used, and if you want to, put in front of it optional design standards, because you sure aren't going to use it everywhere.
I agree with, rather than everything fitting into one cube, if we put design standards, that would open it up more broadly for whatever area. I don't know that I would go optional. Either we decide to go forward doing something or we decide to not go forward doing something, but I don't know that optional, while it may be more palatable, actually does anything but waste our time, maybe. We either do it or we don't.
Well, we don't want to waste any more time than we do.
Only because we kicked around for 2 years, a rustic elegance kind of thing. So we either say we're going to create a design standard and let's take the elephant one bite at a time, or we...
So what are they wanting this just for the signs that introduce people as they're coming into Oconee? Or are they wanting this for businesses or homes or anything that's along the entryways?
This is looking at, signage was looked at, definitely from a life safety perspective, height, setbacks, things of that nature. Design standards were also looked at. as well as landscaping. Also, part of that was from life safety. I think some people went down to Hilton Head and really couldn't find anything because all the shrubs and the signs being so low. And so they asked us to look at those, generally speaking, for commercial. That's where I would start if we were gonna look at anything. As far as the distance or the width of it, that's also a discussion. Where does it start and where does it end?
No, I meant, are they asking, like the sign that says, "Welcome to Oconee"? Are they wanting this kind of standards set for something that the county's doing? Or are they wanting these standards set for businesses that are gonna be built along this?
Businesses that are gonna be built along the corridor.
If you put the word optional, then is there not a way that if it is an area where attractiveness, because I know that's what we're looking at, because I know one of the conversations that was held a long time ago when we were talking about rustic elegance was, as you enter Oconee County from Clemson, and you turn left coming into Seneca at the Ingalls right there on the right, that is not exactly what motivates people to think, oh, what a beautiful place I'm in. There are some things there that do need to be addressed as far as inviting investment, inviting business people, inviting all the things that we want to invite. I think that Seneca has made huge strides and is working diligently at addressing those things. But I think if we don't have an opportunity perhaps to encourage them to make it look nicer, if they put up a new structure, then we may end up with a hodgepodge of, and all I can refer to is I remember that everybody was opposed to anything about design standards until somebody put a pink building between Seneca and Westminster on the left up there. And then all of a sudden everybody wanted to tell us that we should have not let them paint that building pink. So, and I guess that's what I'm getting back to, is that if you go ahead and use the word optional design standards, then it allows the county, maybe, to then say, if you would make it where it's really pretty, we'll incentivize it by, I don't know what all we can do to incentivize it, but businesses tend to want to do things if they get a little bit of a break for doing them, and it benefits the community. Which is why I kind of like the idea of the word optional. And then you just say, but if you don't want to, and you just want to build your building and paint it pink, then go for it. But you're going to have to follow all these rules and regulations, and we're not going to give you any tax incentives, or we're not going to, give you any breaks. Am I wording that correctly, Mr. Chapman?
I think I understand what you're saying, and this is, as Mr. Johnson so astutely put it, is eat an elephant a bite at a time. We're just talking about the name of it right now. So perhaps if we went with design standards, and then if we felt strongly that perhaps let's just use 123 as an example, because we've been talking about it, we call it the 123 design standards. And then if people down if the southern part of the county, of exit 1 was asked about, maybe that's something else. But for the conversation's sake that we will have moving forward, just call it design standards for right now would probably work until, we can always change it. This is nothing that's gonna be written in stone tonight. It's just for us going forward as a conversation's sake. We can just call it optional, we call it design standards. My intent was to kind of put it up to you all to discuss the Appalachian rustic elegance portion of it, if we wanted to go with that, or just design standards. And we can always change it. We can call it one thing or another tonight and change it up down the way. Something I think that we have to send back to planning and economic development tonight.
If we simply call them design standards, then later at some point, if it applies to a certain area, can we put it optional? If it isn't going to be optional, then you just don't add that word to it?
Sure.
Need a motion.
Do you need a motion?
I'd like,
I don't think we do, since it's not codified and we don't necessarily have to vote anything tonight. It's more of a, if you all had worked on Appalachian rustic elegance a lot, and wanted to keep the name, then that's kind of what I was trying to get the temperature in the room of. If you all are okay with just calling it design standards when we look at those, then that's fine too. I just kind of want to get a group consensus on that matter, if you all have an opinion on it. It's not something that's defined tonight. We're not saying what it is tonight, just what's a name.
I think that the phrasing it as design standards is a wonderful thing. I think taking out rustic elegance, because in hearing everything, the north end of the county and the south end of the county and various parts have different needs and different reasons. I do think that the Planning Commission absolutely has a responsibility to deal with design standards in whatever that means, moving into the next 10 to 20 years. Because I do think, as we've already discussed, the state, whether it's the DOT, they're going to give you some minimum standards. And the mess that you see in Clemson, where you have a center turn lane, that cars are coming in both directions at 35 miles an hour to one turning left, one turning right, because there's not anything structured in there. That's the DOT at its best, because they don't have standards that can help that says turn here, turn there. I do think that as we move forward, that it's going to be the county planning department's responsibility to start saying, how can we help make things better? To make sure the safety is put in place, to make sure design is put in place. Whether those standards are minimum or whether they're enhanced.
It's a safety issue. It starts out as a safety issue, and that's really what the
Well,
direction.
the DOT, I mean, you look at the turn at Ingalls. If you've ever made the turn onto 130 at Ingalls, it's a mess because you've got a certain amount of traffic now that cuts off on Old Salem and then cuts through that back area through the Bilo parking lot to bypass that turn. There are several things that have been done to improve. It's still a disaster.
And they're gonna put a QT
Well-
there.
But the DOT has let it be a disaster until finally we said, you've got to deal with this interchange, and they finally started dealing with that interchange. However, if somebody had have said 20 years ago, this is gonna be a pretty big intersection at some point, the DOT would have taken that on at that time to deal with.
We're already identifying areas, and we're starting to try to move forward because we can see some other areas that are going to be a problem.
That are gonna be an issue, and the DOT will take on those things now in any assistance towards the county if we're able to share with them, hey, these are gonna be high-impact areas in the future. So it is our responsibility to start addressing those.
So are we comfortable with design standards, or? I mean, is everybody-
I was gonna say, if you would like, I'll make a motion that the planning commission reply to the, whoever group we're supposed to be, Planning and Economic Development Committee, that we approve of them, not specifically referring to anything as Appalachian rustic elegance, but to simply refer to them as design standards and apply them as necessary in the future.
So the vote is okay. I mean, there's a motion on the floor, don't let me interrupt.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
All right.
What was the motion again? You shortened that?
That we,
The design
It was
standards.
design
that we
standards.
reply back to them to do away with
Design standards?
Appalachian rustic elegance and simply put design standards.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
That's great.
Okay, without further, or any other further discussion? all
This
those-
is just us changing that wording, and that's it. Not saying that we approve of them putting design standards, just
No.
saying that we change the,
That they don't have, when
Okay.
they refer to them, they don't have to call them anything fancy except design standards.
Trying to get rid of rustic elegance. So, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Any unfinished business?
Are we ever going to talk about affordable housing?
1923.
1923, okay.
Before we go to any new business, I'd just like to thank the Agricultural Advisory Commission.
Very much so.
Great document, and y'all did some fine work. really appreciate the work y'all do on that document, so keep up the good work.
I have a question. Adam, where are we at schedule-wise on getting this done? Are we gonna be able to get it done by November? The whole document?
Oh, I mean, that will be squarely in y'all's lap. I will give you, at the next meeting, you will have the land use element. I will also most likely give you the executive summary for a first blush, as well as the input. So we've assembled what we think the format of the document will look like from front page to last page. We'll have a sizable appendix I would like to include, and that's completely up to you all. All the surveys and data and everything else that's been gathered through the course of this, as well as some pictures and things like that. So I would anticipate the next meeting being, drink coffee beforehand. And then we go from there. So if the next meeting, we look at all that, we have some reviews, that puts us into end of October. So let's say the beginning of November, I can hand you a draft document as a whole for you all to review. I probably won't mail that to you because that's a pretty big mailing budget. I mean, it's gonna be a thick document. And then if you all at that point have other comments, things we can change at that point. So, yeah, I think us getting it to council by end of November, beginning of December is certainly well within reach. It just depends how the next element goes. Land use tends to tie the elements together, because that's really the most tactile thing. I mean, we can talk about natural resources, we can talk about community facilities, but at the end of the day, this is what you all deal with, is the land use portion. It's not a huge document, we've had it for a few days now. We've been going through it and doing our best to spell check it, and then looking at it. So you'll have that as soon as I can get it to you, and then we will go from there. But I think it's completely possible for us to have it in council's hands in November or December.
Has council been seeing this work we've done on the comprehensive plan along and along?
I mean, I feel that all the council members watch this in some regard, and they definitely hear about it. I can't speak.
Well, if you're gonna give it to them the 1st of December, and they're not gonna have a meeting in the middle of the month for Christmas, they won't have a whole lot of time to evaluate it.
I would, like I said, I can't speak for the council members, although I do believe that they keep up with it. They're all included in all the media blasts and all the mail outs whenever we send things out. So I can assume that they are involved with it, but I can't speak for them.
But if it goes over into January for them approving it or whatever they have to do with it, we're okay with that?
Well, we become part of Pickens County automatically.
Are we, does it have to be done by December?
We would like it to be done by December, yes. Does it have to be in there? The rationale for the comprehensive plan is that the basis for everything council we do is out of that plan. So I don't believe there's any instance, I mean, I don't know off the top of my head in South Carolina, anyone getting in trouble for not being done that exact day and time. We may have been a little bit late getting our review done by a few years. So I think we're okay, and with the amount of input we're getting, I feel that the intent of us accomplishing it and having robust discussions about it would hopefully preclude anyone from saying they're not doing their job.
Well, in support of what Stacy said, I would like to make sure that if we're meeting 6 more times between now and the end of the year, that we've kind of got an outline as to how we can make sure that we're getting everything in there as quickly as
Even if we
possible.
have to stay longer or meet earlier or whatever we have to do, let's get it done and get it out of the way.
Love that.
Get it done and get it in their hands.
Yes.
All right, October the 1st, we have a meeting with council.
That is correct.
At 5 o'clock.
Right here.
Right here. And then our meeting is on the 7th. And then we have another meeting on the 21st, is that right?
Yes, sir. We technically have 2 meetings on the 21st, one with Clemson, City of Clemson, and then one here that evening as well.
All day affair.
Yeah. So I just want to remind everybody about the council meeting at 5, right before their meeting about the corridor.
And that will be a very concise meeting because they have, to, in order for us to technologically broadcast this, that we have to have at least a 15 or 20 minute pause in the YouTube video, so YouTube knows it's a second, another kind of video link. So like right now, if I were to pause the video, I'll shut down 5 minutes, it'll keep it up showing the planning commission meeting. So we need to have a link. So I feel it'll be a very concise meeting.
More than likely, no more than 30 minutes from 5 to 5:30. That way it gives them time to set up for the 6 o'clock council meeting.
I could assume that.
So that will be we'll have to adjourn, do a meeting in the whole 9 yards.
And speaking to Mrs. Lyle's points, if you all do want to feel that you'll need more time or like more time, I mean, I don't know how y'all's schedules are, but I mean, we can either do earlier or other meetings if you feel that certain things need further look at. So I'll do my best to get you all the backup material in the next couple days for this coming meeting. That way it gives you all enough time to look at it and really chew through it.
And probably after we get this next one out of the way, then we'll know more if we need any extra
So
meetings in there.
land use element is the only element you have not seen yet. So at that point, there won't be any new goals, objectives, strategies for implementation. There'll be the executive summary with an implementation strategy. There will be the survey information, which we received. There's 30 pages, I have 26 pages of comments. So we did all those surveys online. So we have 26 pages of, it was, other comments. People actually use those, by the way. And so we had them in there. What we've done, and I'll explain it to you when we get it as well, is that of those, let's say, for conversation's sake, 300 comments, we went through and said, okay, this person has a comment about this. Have we addressed it? And went back through the goals section and said, oh, this fits in 1.1.1.1. And we've gone through that. So we've done a pretty good job of addressing everything, the majority of what people have said is in the plan in one way or another. We did take have to say, is the intent there, things of that nature. But that's what I'll give to you all to look at, as well as Vivian's put together graphically all the survey results showing what people have said. And we had about 1,100 or so individual survey respondents, and which I'll give you all that information as well.
But all that information is just coming to us, not actually going in the plan, the actual comments and surveys, is that going in the plan, or you're just bringing it to us to show that you addressed it?
Now, that's up for y'all. I like putting it in there. I mean, it does add pages to the plan, but at this point, we're not a like document as it is. I like putting in there just to show the basis for any sort of conclusion that you all came to, saying, well, how did they come up with that? Well, it's the backup material for it. But you all don't have to include it. I mean, that's completely up to y'all.
We also have to finish up the ones we did do, the time frame for completion on some of the other elements that we haven't done. So we'll have to look at all those and put time frames in there.
So if I may, I was going to come back, because after looking through the document, and give you all some suggestions on that, when I bring to after land use and executive summary, we'll bring you that. I think it would be an interesting task for you all to sit up here and try to agree on every single one. There's, I think, about 300 total. So I'd like to give you some options on that, and I'll bring that for you at the next meeting as well.
Can you put them in the document, and then as we're going through to review the document, any that we don't agree with, we could pull out at that time?
I believe we can do that, as well as any other, we may have a different possible way of looking at it as well. I mean, because we just took their framework that they gave us. So our last plan, they kind of used that same framework, since it's familiar to us. So there may be some other options as well, which I will. So yes, for instance, the agricultural element had dates in it. We used a lot of the input. Like, so for instance, if 10 people said preserve farmland, well, it's a higher priority. But I'll show you all that when we, probably not the next meeting, but the one following that, or perhaps.
Okay, have any new business? I hear a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Uh,
Thanks, people. Thanks.